Hello again, this is Brentwood Bob, or Bob LaFollette's my name. I live in Brentwood in California. I wanted to do a new subject today, a different one, and what I chose was to discuss the starter switches. And what I have done to redo a few of them and get them functioning. Seems like I've had one or two short. You can maybe notice when they stick on the top of the starter knob, they cause problems. They'll fuse and you'll have a fire, and you'll maybe short out the wiring, and maybe worse, you'll lose the vehicle just because of this switch. And the originals are old, pretty durable, but 90 years without much care, and there's bound to be something go wrong. And when you stick the starter, you don't use the technique of holding the starter down with your foot until it catches. You may start it. Once it catches, you drop it, and then maybe you hit it again. That isn't good for the starter switch or the Bendix. Anyway, what I have done is I got a hold of a few parts, and then I've been hoarding, obviously, a few switches. And the originals and the replacement housings look pretty similar, but there are some differences. Seems like the rest of the replacements have a little larger hole for the post, and the angle is a little different for the plunger. Where it fits down in the housing. This is formed a little differently on the replacements, and so you have a problem with it working. This is an original stem or push rod, and it fits fairly good, but you get a replacement in there and it binds up, and that's one of the issues with these things. So basically what I want to do is go through putting one together. Before I do that, I'll show you basically a couple of differences in these parts. The tangs, these are originals here. You can usually tell the originals, they have a square end on them. These are cracked in the corners here, and they're going to fail. They also have a pretty sharp hole in the where the plunger attaches, or plunger pushes against the tang or the blade, and some of them have that round hole in them. That's pretty sharp, and the plunger tip that goes inside the rod is just pressed fiber, the replacements. I've seen one in my hoard that was a composite, looked almost like a ceramic, and it was shaped quite a bit different than that T-shape fibered paper. So that's really, I think, the heart of the issue with these things, is that the preferred one to me has a kind of a worn taper or a roundish taper to it, so it's not going to eat into that paper so quickly, that little insert so quick. It's kind of rounded shape so that it shouldn't eat too much into the little plunger tip, which is the part of the action and the really big issue, the weakness of the whole thing. I've got a whole pocket of these. Of course, I've taken about 15 of these apart now to do this project. It's surprising what you learn when you do quite a few of them. But most of these tips are dog meat. They're gone. And that's what fails, and then locks up the switch, and you're at the side of the road. So and here's probably one of the better replacements here, but I mean that's kind of Mickey Mouse to me. I mean, obviously that's what's available, and that's what we use. But I tried to think a little bit about this, and I came up with several options. What I decided, and what I've done on a few of them now, is taking a nylon 5/16 nylon bolts and cutting a section off, and I cut it to about a little bit longer than the length of the replacement. They're probably an eighth or a little bit more, and then round the tip off. Here's one made out of maple, same diameter wood, but I'm not too optimistic about how long it's going to last. But I do think that the nylon, unless you have a dead short and it overheats and then melts out, then you're going to take the switch apart anyway. Hopefully you still have the car. But I'm going to use the nylon and use that as my replacement to this fiber paper. And the length of this is about 1 3/8, and this is a 5/16 bolt. I wasn't able to come across any stock or any nylon rod. Maybe I didn't look in Granger's or look in some of the other suppliers to see what I could find. And my first attempt at this, just after I dreamed this up, was to take go back to the hardware and pick up the nylon nuts that go with this. It's a fairly fine thread, and use those as the stop, because if you look at the replacements, they have a little shoulder on them. Well, I tried that, and it almost locked up the first switch I tried it with. So what I've decided is that I'll just go with the shaft, just the set piece, and round one end of it. On the replacement stems, some of them have a fairly small hole, and you've got to fit that in there, and the rod almost won't fit in there, but the threaded end does. It'll go down inside there. But just the straight shaft, I bought 3-inch long bolts, and I bought I think 1.5 bolts of nylon, and I made most of mine out of the 1.5s. But the rod you can get 2 out of the 3 inches or 4 inches, but I think this is 3. So I cut 2 of those out of there, and basically just file the tip and fit it. I just used a coarse file and some sandpaper, fit it into the shaft, and pretty does a decent job. The kits I've been able to get have insulation, and they're still in the mail, so I'm doing this video without a commercial kit, but I using the best of what I've got for insulators and so forth. So I'll put this together basically for you, but I'm more discussing the problems you're going to run into, and the replacement switches don't have this square end to it. They don't have square copper posts that fit in the square end here and lock it in. They don't have that. They have just a round one, and the round one is hard to work with. You've got to put pretty good tension on it, and the replacements seem to be a little too short. So they're probably a 1/4 inch at the most shorter than the ones that came off the originals. And of course the originals are in pretty decent shape if you're careful when you take them apart, and those are perfectly usable. But I think the gauge of this is more brass than it is copper. I think this is I had thought at one time that this was copper, so it would be annealed and then work hardened if it went through a fusing or where it attaches to the starter post, fused to that, welded to it, and then it would be ruined. But I thought, well, maybe if it's copper I can anneal it and get some more use out of it. But actually I think these are brass. There are the gauge seems to be fairly close to the originals. I used those ones with the broken corners, where the cracked corners are. Those are my I'm using those as kind of a base that I'm trying to match to, and they're a little bit thicker or as thick. Yeah, I'm back. I think the sun is getting to my camera. We'll do it until I hear it switch off again. So basically, I've taken the replacement switch. I've installed the plunger in it. We'll just go ahead and assemble this. And use a good insulator. Here, by the way, is a diagram of the insulator. If you made some up from gasket material to make your insulator, and I just laid a broken one out there to make a copy of it. So I'll take this one. Alright, so what I'm doing, I'm putting the insulator underneath the tongue or the blade. I've got a long post through that's got a square base to it, almost like a carriage bolt, and I need insulation. And on this case, since I'm going, oh, here's one here that's probably another equivalent. Remember now on the this is a housing with a larger hole in it, which is probably a reproduction, and that one, that hole will cause you some problems. Some of the insulators have a raised area where it's kind of centered the post in this larger hole, and that's so you're putting an insulation washer in, getting it fairly snug, because you're going to draw this down. Now you want to go through. Okay, we want the rounded tip, which will fit in the hole of the tongue. And I'm going to change this one to a gooder one. I'm going to change it to a tongue without that little hole. Better to do it now and after I get it all together. The decent one, I've smoothed out the place where this one fused. I hope you can see this because my camera person is not here. I am the camera person. Okay. Put the insulator on. When we finally get this through the housing, we'll put an insulator washer on there, and hopefully one that will keep it centered in the hole, or at least you want to get this started so you don't have it hung up. Now what I'm trying to do is keep this centered in that larger hole. And if it was easy, anybody could do it. You know what I mean? Okay. We'll assemble it and we'll see what happens. Maybe it's going to work okay. Now we take an insulator. And we need a flat metal washer. truth, we'll tighten this up and see how it goes. And I don't want this. It's not moving. There it goes. See, on the reproductions, the angle is screwed up, and it just doesn't want to plunge at the right angle. What I'm doing is I'm trying to give it some pressure here and see if it'll come out far enough to actuate the starter, and it will, but you got to push it pretty good. Okay, so that's basically together now, and I'll look it over off camera afterwards and see if I can get the action a little bit smoother. I may have to change the tongue on this. These the originals are really stiff. The reproductions not so much. So that's basically it. I think using this nylon plunger is really a key to the whole thing. You basically, let me kind of run through this starter switch thing. That you would be replacing your starter switch because it failed, or the little whatever the original plunger piece, if it's gone, that will jam it up, or the insulation's bad, maybe the threads on the post fail or are worn out or too short. So basically you just disassemble it, and you can try using the kit, but you don't have the kits don't have a blade, the kits don't have a post, so you're basically going to cannibalize the post from something if it's bad. So you're basically taking 2 or 3 to make one, and the reproductions have posts on them, but I doubt that they're a direct replacement. I think these round ones, they have a nice indent in the hole for the plunger, but the post is a little short, and it's a little hard to tighten that. Some of the posts have a two squared sides, and you can get a vice grip or something on it to tighten it down, tighten the insulation down. But you're going to be using what you can cannibalize off the replacement, which I think's in the 27 to 30 buck range for cost, and then try and fit that into your new housing. And another good reason to maybe try and use original housing, if it's not all worn through where the plunger is because the angle will be different for the starter, for the foot starter, and that can be an issue. I have bent 1 or 2 of those down, trying to get them to work to get that action, but you still got some weaknesses in the reproduction. And so hopefully this nylon plunger is one improvement that you could make, and of course you're changing all the insulation. So you're replacing the insulations to it. One of the other problems I run into was the washer. There's a washer that faces the insulation on the top of the unit, and some of those have where they're threaded. Well, that kind of does it. I think I covered enough so that you could do one yourself and see how that works for you. I really, you need to round these edges, which I didn't do on camera, but I just used a file and worked them quite a bit. You can probably go on a grinder and get it down. You want kind of a, not a pencil edge, but you want something that's got fairly almost like a pencil edge to it on one end of this replacement, and on the other end you just kind of want to round the corners and so forth so it'll fit into the housing and hold it in place. I don't think you just leave it loose in there. So that's hopefully that's a good tip for you. So we'll try and come up. I got I want to do a couple of other things to follow up, but with other projects. But I thought this would be useful and interesting to you. Thanks for your time.